Welcome to the BXG podcast, the podcast where pop culture and nerd culture meet at the nexus of the universe and are melded as seamlessly as English actors and hip-hop rappers. I am one of your hosts, Bretton Bestwick, alongside my co-host, Mr. Load Management himself, Greg Filson. Greg, how are you tonight?
I'm rested because of the load management. I had a nice sleep, and I'm ready to rock and roll. How did you know?
No second night of the back-to-back for you.
No, never. Got to rest the knees.
Right. And then tonight we're joined by a special guest to form our first three-man weave, the German Ivan Drago, Josh Faltot.
Wow.
Josh Faltot.
That was quite the intro, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope we get to touch on that.
Why not? We might as well.
Part of the BXG shared cinematic universe. So Josh is an author and a. Can I call you Josh, or do I have to refer to you by your?
Technically,
your street name.
Yeah, my street name, my branding is JCL. So if we're gonna be cool about me being an author, I think we got to go by the acronym JCL.
Okay, there. JCL. My street name's Little Bootsy.
I'll try my best to remember that for the duration of this interview. So I've worked with juvenile delinquents, and one of the kids told me that his street name was Drippy Cannon. That's an actual story. Interesting.
That's a real thing. So if you're out there, Drippy Cannon, and you're listening to this, I appreciate the reviews. We do want to welcome in our worldwide audience all the way from Indonesia. And the BXG podcast publishes every Friday at 7 a.m. on Podbean and trickles out to other services throughout the day. We do have official BXG social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram at BXG Podcast, at Twitter at BXG Podcast, plus the YouTube static image where as of tomorrow night I'll be streaming Fall Guys. And as I was telling Greg before we went on, I was on such a heater before we started that I considered canceling the episode so that I could keep playing because I'd won 3 out of my last 4 matches, and that's really difficult. A couple corrections from the last episode. We had some technical issues where Greg sounded really crackly and also sounded like, because I turned his volume down a little bit too much, that he was recording in a Taliban propaganda video. So hopefully we alleviate that with some improved technology. The other issue was that I flubbed the timestamps on the Mandalorian in review sections, and I put those out of order because I took the times from prior to adding some extra things in. So hopefully that was it. But I didn't get any factual errors. Did you have any factual errors that we made, Greg?
No, I couldn't think of anything. Nothing stood out to me. I thought we were pretty on point last week.
Yeah, I don't remember. Well, through the magic of editing, we were able to disguise the fact that we had to look a few things up in the middle of our conversation. So there is that. But we wanted to bring Josh on, or JCL, excuse me.
Thank you, Little Bootsy.
We wanted to bring JCL on to talk about some of his writings. You've published 3 books, right?
That's correct.
And then you have 2 ongoing podcasts as well?
That is also correct.
So we wanted to bring you on, and I just wanted to say from my own volition before we started the conversation that, I think for me, you've been a big inspiration on us doing this, and that's because you and I went to high school together. We graduated together from the fine institution of Mercer High School. You've been out here doing these different creative endeavors. I think the first book came out in 2012?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember reading it at a training I was at on our lunch break, sitting on my phone.
Oh, no kidding.
With like the Kindle app.
Yeah.
Awesome. I remember that from that summer.
That's awesome.
Checking out. So I've always just had an admiration for that because, we're small town guys, and I think anybody can do this. It's just kind of taking the leap to do it and putting yourself out there a little bit. So I've definitely found a lot of inspiration from you in both of those avenues. So I do want to say that Greg doesn't know who you are, doesn't know you from Adam, but for me, it's a big deal to get you to come on and talk to us because I have been a little bit inspired by you, especially in the podcast realm.
Cool, man.
I think it's cool that we know someone that's doing this and has been doing it and is successful at doing it. That's cool, and I was just happy to have that going on this for tonight.
Cool.
So we're really happy to have you.
Yeah, man, it's an honor. Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I remember messaging with Brenton. Well, Little Bootsy. Just to make sure that we're keeping it straight. So
keep it at 100.
Yeah, keep it in there. Probably a year or so ago, and you were talking about ideas you had for stories and some podcasts and things that you wanted to do, and you were fleshing out some ideas. And I just remember, just like, you definitely had like the gusto. You were like, yeah, I think this is going to happen. I think I'm eventually going to pull the trigger here. And then one day, lo and behold, the BXG podcast drops, and I went, oh, like, I remember thinking to myself, this has now come to that moment where you guys are launching it. So that's really cool. And just, I appreciate those words, man. It is cool. It's cool to know that something that I'm doing is inspiring some other people out there to get out and find their voices too. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate that. The first thing that we wanted to talk about, and usually the way we do this is we do our corrections and then our listener inquiries, but those are kind of more scattered throughout the episode because they deal with specific topics. And then we have our 6-pack of our non-official sponsor, LaCroix, sparkling water, key lime, passion fruit for Greg.
Do they have that in California? Do they have that in California? LaCroix?
Yeah.
Or is it called something else?
No, it's LaCroix. Yeah, we have it. LaCroix, whatever. Yeah. But generally, I like the passion fruit.
Yeah, I'm a key lime guy.
Or just the plain. Yeah.
There's a plain?
There's
a
plain.
Water?
It's just bubbly water.
That's not good. Oh. That's not. I don't like that.
If you have a tummy ache.
Well, I always have one. So... I had 9 cookies for breakfast. Maybe that in and of itself needs to be a correction. So we do our 6-pack, and then we do the clip of the week, and then we do our quick hitters. But the first 2 topics that we wanted to bring you on to talk about, and I know you've got some rest that you need to get. We were talking about some things before we went on, but I wanted to start off first with your writing, and you've written 3 books with a 4th on the way.
With a 4th on the way. I am pregnant. I am pregnant with a book right now, so I'm.
I don't. That sounds horrifying.
Painful.
It is painful for anyone who's listening. Writing a book and getting it finally out into the masses is, my wife is not in the room, so I can say this out loud. Is that it could be akin to labor pains, but I've been in the room for the 3 births, and I won't be kicking and screaming for the actual birth of it.
They're not going to bring in the needle that they have to put hold it up like a pole vault to stick it into your back.
There is a part of me though that wishes there was a needle that they could just inject in you to get to the very end of the book. Like that would be great. If I could just get through all of that and the editing and every other just horrible time killer thing that it actually all adds up at the end of the day, that'd be fantastic. No, we instead have to begrudgingly get through it till we get to the very end.
So a lot of what you said kind of plays into some of the questions that I wanted to ask you. So the first 2 books that you wrote, they're more like, I would say they're almost like essays or like a collection of essays. I remember reading the first one and thinking to myself, this looks like I'm reading something out of Mr. Sankey's class, just like the tone, with how it was written and some of the message you were conveying. Those were a little bit different. And then the third one was like a full-fledged novel. It's pretty girthy. And somewhere my copy of it is floating around Jefferson County, Pennsylvania, because I let a kid borrow it at work and he took it home with him. So, I mean, he liked it enough. I mean, he didn't pay for it, so that doesn't really help you, but
get that money from him. Come on, little Bootsy. Let's go.
Yeah. send my hit squad. So I guess it's more of a question about the novel is how do you arrive at, like, what's the process to start that?
Ooh, this is probably different for a lot of people when it comes to writing books. It all begins with a little bit of a spark of inspiration, and you start to get a vision of something, and typically what happens is if you start to see characters and you start to see a direction, and then you start to think about, I mean, this is the way my mind works, but I start thinking about themes, I start thinking about voice, I start thinking about what am I trying to get across with this story. And that's also part of the journey, is that starting at the beginning and then kind of having an idea where the ending is, and then figuring out all the middle points as you go. It's fun. I mean, it's definitely fun, but it's not like with movies and whatnot where you can kind of sit down and kind of just enjoy the moment, and as the story progresses and you're catching on all the narratives and everything. Whereas with writing a book, starting it out, like there's usually a lot of energy at the very beginning. Like there's tons and tons of energy. Like you just feel like you could be up all night, with this single idea, outlining it, coming up with characters, coming up with different plot points. And then there's a lull that happens. You almost come down off of the mountain. And that's where the real hard work begins, is I have to somehow harness what was inspiring and carry that through the duration until I finish with the book, which is not an easy feat for, again, if anyone who has ever written one or tried to, you can probably relate to that.
I want to write books. I went to school for journalism. I worked at newspapers for the better part of the last 13 years, and there's just one thing that's always been challenging for me is just I have the inspiration or maybe I have an idea, but to actually just sit down and do it, I've always found really, really difficult. And what's inspired you? What inspires you to sit down and just put your thoughts down and to get it going and to stay with it? I think it's been the hardest thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. Part of it is I kind of have an obsessive personality. I'm one of those people that if I'm mulling over it long enough, I know that it means something to me. And that's when I just kind of have to get it out. I have to express it. I think most creatives can agree with this, is that there's a time and a place where you realize, okay, I want to express this somehow. I want to be able to get this out and see what people think about it. And I'm not one of those writer/artists who goes, well, I just write it just for me. It's just for my sake and my sanity. There is a part of that, of course. But ultimately, it really is something that, hey, I want to share it with people and see what they feel about it, what they think about it. Bring everyone into my small, or not small, but my crazy world, and see what people think about it. So yeah, I mean, that's.
How have you found receiving criticism? I think that's one of the things you and I kind of talked about is whenever I started kicking around the idea of doing this and that was one of the things that stuck out, is hearing that maybe you've done a bad job or not maybe as well as you think you're doing. Kind of, because in my professional life, when somebody tells me that I'm doing a bad job, I just assume that they're wrong and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Because I'm typically the smartest guy in the room, or at least I feel like I am, and I can just disregard what they're saying and move on. But in the creative process, I would say it's a lot different. Because a lot of times, and Greg kind of talked about this when we did our top 10 albums, is what I like is different than what he likes. And when it comes to creative works, whether it be written or music or movies or art or whatever, there is kind of a beauty in the eye of the beholder type situation.
Yeah, a lot of really good stuff there. Every bit of art is beauty in the eye of the beholder, like you said. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. There are certain themes, there are certain universal concepts that every person can relate to. Was it? Oh man, I'm blanking on his name right now, and I'm totally mad about it. I think it was Joseph Campbell. I can't remember.
Joseph Stalin.
No. No. Man,
different kind of creativity.
Yeah, I feel so bad that I don't remember what his name. He was the author of The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and he basically came up with this idea of the hero's journey, or he had expounded upon it, this story arc of how there's a hero, there's a great incident, evil has to be undone, there's a weapon that you have to acquire to defeat the evil, things like that. And there's this typical archetype to that kind of story that every person resonates with, that every person goes, yeah, I do feel like I'm up against everything. There's this man versus the world, trope that's out there as well. So there's definitely very familiar concepts and themes that every person is going to be able to relate to at some level. The real challenge is for any creative person is to try, I don't want to say be original because it's almost impossible, but essentially finding your voice and telling a story and crafting it and learning how to do that properly. That's really where I think the rubber meets the road for folks.
Well, I think that's like, I think it was Spielberg said there's really only 7 different types of stories.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a little bit what you're saying there, that it is hard to be original. Mm-hmm. At this point, I see it a lot. I think we've discussed at length that my area of expertise is probably video games. There's only so much you can do. You know what I mean? And we'll talk a little bit about that later in one of our quick hitter topics. But so my next question is you mentioned the revising and the editing process. How long does that take when you're dealing with a 300, 400 page book?
Oh, it can take forever. I mean, so my process is like I come up with an idea. Like I said, lots of steam at the beginning, lots of energy, lots of stuff that I want to get down. I usually put it in like an Excel sheet and I start outlining maybe chapters, things like that. And then it's just really by flying by the seat of my pants in order to finish it. If you're doing it by yourself as a self-publisher like I have been, you spend so much time in revising and editing that it almost feels like hell. Like you're just like, I'm never going to get out of this. It can take months. It could take a whole year. I mean, there really is no time limit because unless you've got a team around you, which a lot of authors do get teams, and like I have creative groups that I'm a part of here in the Midwest that help me kind of keep me accountable on certain stuff. Which is another thing I wanted to mention too, real quick sidebar. If you are a creative writer, if you are any bit of a creative, definitely get into a group of other creatives so you can bounce ideas off of each other and do things like that, because it really, really helps. If you're the sort of the arbiter of your own destiny in some sense, and whatever the time limit is that it needs to be done, and revising and editing can take longer than the actual story that you write it when you start going back and start changing things. I think it was Hemingway who said, "Kill your darlings." There are things that you think are really good and really great, but with the moment you put it in front of somebody else and they read it and they think it's garbage, you should probably consider maybe taking it out. I mean, depending upon.
So is that something that you do, that you put it, you have your two younger brothers who, whenever I went back and was a substitute teacher for a couple years, they were basically the same person to me. And then your wife, obviously. When you are writing through things, do you pass that out to, or your groups or stuff like that to kind of get a feel for how it's going to be received?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to do that. I mean, there's no way that you can just do it all inside of you can't do the Henry David Thoreau method of just locking yourself in a cabin. I mean, I guess you could. I mean, that's what Thoreau did for a good portion of his writing career. But eventually, you have to come out of that space and you have to share it with people and see what they think. I mean, otherwise it could be wasted time and effort. And it's not to say that pulling the audience and getting a consensus is always the right answer. I mean, that's not to say that that's the best way to do it, but the best thing you can do are to find people who are A, credible, and B, you're going to trust their criticism, and C, they're not going to just tell you what you want to hear. I mean, they're going to tell you the things that are difficult and are going to challenge you to actually reconsider either writing something or coming up with a different idea or whatever it is. I mean, that's I guess back to your other question, that is also, I think, what separates the men from the boys or the women from the girls, however you want to put it, when it comes to being a writer, is that if you can't take criticism, just get out. You're not going to be able to do it. I'm just going to tell you that right now. If you cannot take criticism, I mean, I've gotten some bad reviews from people before. I remember when I got my first real hard criticism on like my first book from someone, and I remember just feeling deflated, like big time. I was like, oh man, like I thought everybody would love this. This is great. Right. Yeah, this is funny. I mean, Brenton Bestwick's reading this on his Kindle. Like
Little Bootsy.
Yeah, Little Bootsy's reading this. And he's giving away my books to these kids and stuff like that. I mean, this thing's gonna go, spread like wildfire. Right. But and that's just the reality, though. Is I think there's like an 80-20 principle out there that if your audience, 80% of them are really enjoying it, and the other 20% don't like it, so what? So what? That you're definitely being successful in what you're doing.
This is going to be a weird analogy, but it's kind of like we went to buy a car, and the salesman said that if you have a good experience buying a car, you're going to tell 3 people, and if you have a bad experience buying a car, you're going to tell 33 people.
Oh yeah.
What's funny about that is we had a really bad experience buying a car from this guy, and I have told probably 53 people. But I do think that we talk a lot about movies and things like that, and I would say sometimes I talk more about the movies or the books or the TV shows that don't grip me than do. So I think that there's probably a little bit to that analogy here.
Mm-hmm. But what's also interesting about people is that in general, and I think this is a more recent study, is that your brain will actually try to remember better things, good memories over bad, as you get older.
I don't think that's new. I think that's been...
Yeah. Yeah,
that one probably stands the test of time.
Yeah, it's probably newer to me though, since I've been looking these things up, and I'm going, oh, okay. Yeah, that actually makes sense to me that would be the case. That you try to remember the good over the bad, unless it's something truly traumatic.
So my question, I just wanted to know, was it harder on the first book or is it harder on the fourth book? Because the first book you're just trying to get out there, but on the fourth book you're out there, and now you kind of have expectations for yourself. Where does that rank for you now?
Oh man, okay, so the fourth book definitely harder now. It's harder because you're constantly comparing yourself to your first few books that you do. Oh man, the process now is even more painstaking because the first book is almost like a leap of faith, like Brenton, you had said. It's just you just basically leaping out and you're saying, hey, here's my idea and I'm going to see what people think of it. And when you start writing more and you start putting out more material and content and you start seeing people responding to it, that can kind of change your positioning on things and like how you go about your processes and also about what you're going to write. So now that I'm on my fourth book and writing it, there's so much more now that I consider, hey, how am I going to launch this thing? Or, maybe I need to hit on this topic a little bit better, or I feel like I'm being repetitive with this, and I was repetitive with that in the last book, and I don't want to beat a dead horse with this idea, and I don't want to go too long in this one. Maybe I do want to go longer with this chapter. There's all kinds of things now that you start reevaluating about your writing. But that's just that's just in general, though, as a writer and an artist. You're always going to be reevaluating your work. You're always going to be comparing it to old material or things that you've done, because it does change over time, but not to the point where you might be writing a completely different genre. I mean, I kind of did, but I always had that voice for science fiction. So yeah, it's now I feel like it's harder than it was when I first had all this energy, and now I just don't.
Do you have a full-time day job, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage all of what you do with both writing and with the podcast, with also working full time and having a gaggle of children?
I didn't. Well, how much is a gaggle? Is that exactly 3?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, you're not starting your own basketball team yet.
No, I'm not. No, and no. It's as far as my
3-on-3 team, maybe.
Yeah, maybe 3-on-3. As far as my wife's concerned, it will only be a 3 team. So we're done with that. But yeah, it's the work-life balance there is really difficult, and I feel like our generation has all the tools necessary to do it.
Because we all have ADHD.
Yeah, we all have ADHD, and we were all told for years that we're unique and we're special, and we can do it if we put our minds to it. You can just get out there and make it happen. And
see, and that's the thing is, and I mentioned this earlier, I work with kids, and I've realized the important thing is to be honest with these kids. So I tell them all the time, there's like 6 things you can do, man. Mm-hmm. Let's be realistic. Top shelf, garbage man.
Right. Top shelf. Yeah, but that's just it, though, is that you have all these resources, you have all these tools available to you, and you realize that the only thing really stopping you is just your lack of ability to discipline yourself and possibly do it, and that's pretty much it. And also the ability to be teachable. You have to be able to listen to other people who have done it longer than you and who are interested or have been interested in doing it longer than you, and finding out their tips and tricks and things like that. There really is a lot more to being taught when it comes to writing and balancing your day than there is actually just barreling head in and just trying to figure it out. Because let's be honest, I mean, human nature would lean towards, I will just keep doing the same thing over and over again until I get it right. I will just keep hammering that nail no matter how crappy it is or how bad my hammer is. Oh, gosh, I'm gonna put it in the wood, right? Like, I will eventually make this happen. When in reality, all you had to do is just ask another person for a different hammer, or maybe I should replace the nail or something. But we're so stubborn in thinking that I can just will my way to do it. No, I mean that's foolish. That's a foolish way of thinking. There is a ton of prep with disciplining your day, figuring out when you're gonna record, when you're gonna write, when you're gonna make time for it, how you're gonna communicate that to your spouse if you're in that kind of a situation, and just figuring out how those priorities all line up is so important. So there are times when I'm terrible at time management and I don't write for weeks, and I'm just kind of put it on the shelf and I say, I can't do this right now. I'm just not going to do it. And there are times where I feel like, okay, I feel really inspired, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to record a couple episodes now. I'm going to bang those out over the next week or two, and you kind of get into that flow of things, really. But I think until, like, Austin Kleon is a good voice for this. He was a guy that I was following for a while who talked about how to pay the bills and also follow your creative pursuits, and just really good kind of step by step of how to follow that path to eventually getting to the point where, yeah, I don't need to do the day job, which the thing anymore. I can do this creative pursuit full time. But let's be honest, that's a very small percentage of people that are able to do that on a massive scale. Okay, so
sure.
I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do, but it can be done. I mean, I think that's the reason why people still gravitate towards it, is that, hey, I've seen other people do it, and they've gone from, grassroots, and now they're there. It's kind of like being a little leaguer and thinking you're going to play in the major leagues. You're part of that small percentage that could make it. I can do it. I can make it. So, yeah.
That kind of actually segues into the topic number 2, which I wanted to talk to you about, your 2 podcasts. Mm-hmm. So you have the narrative wars and the writer's lens. Mm-hmm. So how do you hit on or decide on your 2 topics? Because it seems like with the narrative wars, it's very current event heavy. Mm-hmm. And then the writer's lens is more taking an existing property, like a movie or a book or whatever, and then kind of deconstructing it in different ways. So how do you, I mean, the current event thing is easy, especially in 2020. That's like a buffet of things to choose from.
It is.
But with the writer's lens and picking some of those, because I was going back through, your back catalog, and I see, Robin Hood, Tombstone, great movie. Some of the other topics that you've done. I'm still waiting for the Space Ghost.
I know, man. And I did that. I actually did that episode, and I deleted it by accident. I deleted it. I didn't have the heart to tell you, though, because I was like, man, Brendan's going to be so mad. I didn't release this episode yet. So I had it. I had a Space Ghost Coast to Coast critique, and I did a whole thing on Brack's songs. I had I had a whole thing on it, and I went, oh my gosh, this is so nostalgic. And then I deleted it somehow. I went, where did it go? I thought I had this somewhere. No, it's gone. So I'll have to go back to it and do it at some point. But anyway, so that's
Just as a quick aside, I remember the Space Ghost Coast to Coast video or episode with George Clinton from Parliament.
Oh man!
And I remember never laughing harder in my life than that episode. I think I spit pop out of my nose. It's not even like that funny. No. It's just George Clinton's reaction to what's going on. He just has no idea what to do. It's really funny. It's probably on YouTube.
It probably is. That show was like so ahead of its time, man. I mean,
definitely.
It was brilliant.
Definitely.
It was so brilliant. I mean, it was a show that if you launched it in today's environment in 2020,
it would be huge.
It'd be massive. I mean,
it would be huge. That and what was the other? Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law.
Those two were both. That would be incredible.
Those 2 were both ahead of their time. Harvey Birdman. Well, I mean, realistically, like they were doing a lot of the humor that you see in like South Park and Family Guy and stuff like that. It was just more intellectual, and I think because it was on Cartoon Network and it was on Adult Swim and everything, people just like didn't get it.
No.
People tuned into Adult Swim for their anime and crap like that, but or some other things. But those shows were just so funny, especially Space Ghost. It was so funny.
Hilarious. And the best part about it is that I'd never watched a lick of the original Space Ghost ever.
No, I don't think anybody. Well, that's like I think C-Lab too was kind of in that same wheelhouse where it was older, and then and that was another one where some of the episodes were just like out of their mind funny. Aqua Teen Hunger Force, same thing. Yeah. But yeah, that old Adult Swim lineup, holy crap, that was some good stuff.
Yeah, it was.
But anyway, back to the actual topic at hand, with how you kind of choose from your different topics and how you want to approach those.
Sure. So you're right. I mean, the narrative wars is definitely current event heavy type topics, and since they are heavier, that's kind of the challenge with narrative wars is that if you're going to do a current event, you should get it out as fast as possible. And B, make sure you have at least some good knowledge on the topic if you're actually going to talk about it. Otherwise, you just sound like a blithering idiot. And that's not something you want to do if you're going to be doing a podcast.
Unless you're Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Then you're golden. The wilder, the better.
The wilder, the better, the more insane profanity laced things you can put out there, you will get as many hits as possible. Which he was just on Rogan again recently.
Yeah.
I don't have the heart to listen to it though. I really don't.
I couldn't. The last time he was on Rogan and went for 4 hours, I turned it off after humanoid pig people in the breakaway space society. I was like, okay, man.
That's enough. That's enough for me. Well, did you listen? Well, again, we're getting off topic, but did you listen to the Kanye interview?
No.
Oh, you didn't?
Greg, did you listen to that?
Yeah. I don't know. It's like pretty much what I expect though from Kanye at this point.
Yeah.
We've touched on that. Like the craziest thing Kanye could do at this point is make sense.
When he said the prequels were better than the last, it was like, what is he like?
First of all, I want to know why somebody's putting a microphone in Kanye West's face and asking him what order the Star Wars movies come in his mind. Like, how do we arrive at that? Why? How's that the topic of discussion with Kanye West?
Which funny thing you should say about that? Have you seen that video of the person who does the Star Wars critique, and they say that the movies are all named incorrectly, but you haven't seen that? You should check it out, man. You will appreciate it. You guys will appreciate it. They take all 9 films, and it's the names of each film, but they put them in the order that they're supposed to be named. So it's like the first one is actually Rise of Skywalker, is what
that would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, it literally is like what it's supposed to be about. I think Revenge of the Sith ends up being like The Empire Strikes Back or something like that. The Empire Strikes Back is like the Force Awakens or something like that. I mean, it's actually Return of the Jedi then is with, I think is the last one. I can't remember, but it was.
Yeah. I think I may have seen this written
yeah.
I don't think I've seen a video, but I think I have seen it written.
It was pretty creative. It was pretty well done. I was a little shocked at how well it actually synced up, and I went, wow, that actually makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, what were we discussing again? I feel like we're in a Joe Rogan moment.
Seriously. Where's Elon Musk with the weed? How you come up with your topics?
Oh yes, how I come up with my topics. Just like this, I just start randomly talking about things, and then I eventually come to a point. No, the writer's lens is much more pragmatic, because it's basically I pick up a story that I think or that was inspiring, or that I like, or that I've watched recently, or maybe I read a long time ago, and I go, oh yeah, that would be a cool theme to talk about and unpack. That would be really, really neat. The writer's lens in that regard is fun to do because there really isn't as much pressure with that one, because again, it's art and it's subjective, and it's I think this is a cool theme. I'm going to talk about it, and other people might find it interesting too, because I love diving deeper into these ideas and seeing how they spread into so many different areas of our life. So that's really fun for me. And the narrative wars can be almost intimidating to do episodes for, because you feel like I did one episode on who's responsible for the pandemic, and that one almost immediately China has been responsible the whole time. So basically, when I do that episode, I'm just thinking to myself, this is going to be a very polarizing topic. I mean, this is going to be something that people are going to either have a very strong reaction to, but that's the whole point of it. At the same time, right. I mean, there's different narratives out there about what is going on, and really, I talk about this with my creative group all the time, is that we live in an age of just a lot of misinformation. We live in an age of fast-moving information, whether it's right or wrong or indifferent, whatever. And there's a war over narratives. There's a war over what's true or not. So I just love engaging in that and just challenging what is the narrative. What's right, what's wrong. So.
I think it kind of takes a lot of personal courage to put yourself out there, because there's a lot going on, like you said, and I certainly have a lot of thoughts on it, and I know that Greg does as well, and we've basically said with this podcast that politics is out of bounds. We're not going to get in there, and part of that is because it's as soon as you take a side, you're turning people off. I think it takes a lot of personal courage to put yourself out there, because you are putting yourself in a position of dividing your audience, basically. If you say that you feel one way, or you feel that this is this is true or this is not true, or that, you know, that the votes are being counted but they're not legal, or that they are legal, or whatever, you know, you're potentially turning off part of your audience. And at the end of the day, that's what we all want to do, is build our audience, you know.
Yeah. And that's also part of the creative, this is a great segue as well, that's also part of the creative struggle, is that you really want to find your voice and what it is that you can hone and share with people, but at the same time you can't be something for everybody. I mean, you're never going to be that super populist or whatever it is of the creative world. It's just not going to happen for you. Everyone's tried to do that. No one has been able to succeed yet, and I don't think anyone ever will. I mean, it's just the way that it is. In that topic, I mean, you're absolutely right. And one of the things I feel really challenged in this with the narrative wars is trying to create as much space in that podcast for invitation, for people to be invited into, not necessarily saying like these are the only two options you have, but more so changing the perspective on something, changing the lens on something, because oftentimes we're so inundated with messaging, whether it's through story, whether it's through mass media, whatever it is, that we're almost like subconsciously being told this is true or not. And and I think that's really partially my aim with that, is to try to make a more challenging and inviting type of environment there with that podcast. That, yeah, I will turn off some people. Yeah, so what? You know, again, that's part of the fear of criticism that I think people have, is that if I put something out there, I know people are not going to like it. Well, so what? You know, I want people to know that there's a voice for this, and and B, you know, you can actually talk about those things and not, you know, fear of the gallows or something like that. Or what.
So that kind of leads into my next question, which is, how hard is it to do a podcast where you're having a discussion with yourself? Because you typically don't have guests on.
No, not anymore. You know, I found myself to be way more interesting. To just continue to talk to myself the whole time.
I've often had the same problem.
I know. Well, when you have a name like Little Bootsy, I mean, you just like, there's just too much, you know, me in the room. I just can't deal.
I think that's actually, like, no joke, I think that's a real rapper.
It could be. I mean,
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. Might have to change it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really that difficult, because I'm such stream of consciousness. Like, I write how I speak usually, and it's very easy for me to put thoughts in order after a while. And granted, this is not something that's just totally natural either. This is something I've had to work at.
Sure.
You know, to get better at over time. What I find is that when you're doing a podcast just by yourself and you're just talking with kind of stream of consciousness, you're telling a story. I mean, you're still telling a story. I still have an intro. I still have a body of what I've done, and then I still have a conclusion where I bring everything in for a landing. And since I love telling stories, I could have one person in the room, or I could have 100, and I'm still trying to, you know, hit on all cylinders on that same exact idea. I mean, again, like, jokingly, I enjoy doing it by myself, but I love having the camaraderie of a guest, and, you know, doing things like this is really fun. Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's kind of my next question. You sort of hinted at it, is how scripted are those particular, like, are you said you have a conclusion, a body, and an intro. I mean, we kind of invited you into our process a little bit. Ours is heavily scripted. Mm-hmm. I mean, even, you know, the very beginning with the some of the intro jokes and everything are the whole way through written out in our topics, and you know, you could probably kind of tell as we're doing the episodes with the headlines, and I'm reading some of the things, and you could probably tell and stuff like that. But I mean, how much of it is scripted, and how much of it is, you know, like you said, stream of consciousness, where you're just kind of, you know, riffing off yourself?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I that process has evolved for me, but big time. I mean, when I first started doing it, I would do like 5 or 6 bullet points, and then I would just riff off of those. Those are some of my earliest episodes. Probably the first 20, 25 episodes of The Writer's Lens, that's just what I was doing. I said, here are my 5 or 6 bullet points. I'm going to go with it. And then I realized that I could be a lot cleaner. I could refine it better by writing things out more. Not like in a manuscript, but I could outline. Okay, so here's my first point. Here's my second point. Here's some things underneath. Here's going to be my transition piece. I put that in big, bold caps. Then I go to this next part. And now I've really landed on intro, body, conclusion, and then I have like scripted parts I write out. Like the intros that I do now for the Writer's Lens and the Narrative Wars, I write that whole thing out. You know, I write it out. I just say it all in one piece. It just works better that way, because once you actually get into the body of what you're talking about, that's when you can kind of riff a little bit and you can kind of go off, go down some tangents and whatnot, and you can kind of come back to the spine of whatever it is that you're talking about. But when you're trying to bring someone in initially, you want to be as polished as possible. So you want to sound good. I mean, you want to sound like you're about to bring something coherent and isn't going to be all over the place. So I find that to be much more successful, especially now, just with the responses I get from people and, just the feedback that I get at this point is like, yeah, that's really changed a lot and that sounds a lot better.
Do you think that, with the practice of having done, many episodes like that, going by yourself, I couldn't really imagine doing something like this because I tend to just go way off on tangents or I just won't stop. And Brenton's here to cut me off or to go into the next subject, which I thank him about because I know I can do this. So, is it practice over time where you find yourself like you're going maybe a little too far out there and you reel yourself back in, or how do you reel yourself back into the subject matter at hand?
The phenomenal tool of editing in my file is probably the best way of doing it. But yeah, there's sometimes where I will do an episode and I'll talk for 25-30 minutes and I'll just hit stop recording and I'll go, it's perfect. It's just the way I wanted it. It sounded just right. I'm done. There's other times where I'll record the same episode 4 or 5 times over until I finally get it right. Then I'll feel like, okay, I can put this out now. That's why for me, live streaming is such a scary thing to do, because once you hit that live button and you're on, you better have something good to say, and you're just not just going to start, like you said, going in tangents and all of a sudden I'm talking about Kanye West's interview with Joe Rogan instead of talking about, the pandemic or something or whatever it is I wanted to talk about. Practice makes perfect, though. I mean, once you start doing repetition. I mean, this is what the 8th episode you guys are doing.
It's the 8th plus one extra one, so it's 9. Yeah.
Okay, so 9. Yeah. So I just remember the first 10 episodes I did were just constant trial and error for me. I mean, and you guys have actually developed a pretty good. I would say for doing this now in the beginning stages of your podcast, actually have a pretty good rhythm and sound polished enough when you're doing it. For me, though, it was just kind of like, I'm just going right into it. I've listened to a few people tell me what to do. I'm going to try some of their techniques. I'm going to see what happens. And then eventually it's like, okay, I'm finding my own voice. I'm figuring out what works for me. And not only that, figuring out what's most efficient, because a lot of creatives and people that do stuff like this waste so much time with things that don't help the final product. Like, oh, I've got to figure out the perfect transition music here, or I have to, I've got to bring in this person just for 30 seconds and I've got to say that and just make it right. It's like, no, okay, you got to do the cost analysis here. I mean, if something's inhibiting you from getting to the next whatever it is, you got to cut that out. I mean, you got to stop doing that to yourself. So accountability is helpful for that too, but yeah, it's very easy to get off on a tangent. It's very easy to get off topic. That's just part of how it is. But again, over time, learning to discipline yourself, learning to stick to something, learning to stick to the topic at hand, you just grow in that over time. Has
writing the books helped with the podcast? Because the editing, it's similar and different, but I feel like the editing is going to end up being about the same kind of deal.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then you become more familiar with the reality that it's never 100% perfect. I mean, you understand that you may feel like this was 99.9% great, but still feel a little bit off about the product or feel a little bit off about what you finally did. And that's fine. I mean, that's okay. I mean, you're going to have peace of mind on some things that you do. Especially when you write something and you put it down. And just speaking honestly, I could write a paragraph in a book, in one of my books, and I could chop that thing up probably 25 times. I want to say it this way, or I want to say it that way. At some point, you have to say, okay, I'm at peace with this, move on. Okay, I can't just keep mulling over this over and over again because I'll just keep wanting to change it. That's another thing that you find out over time, that you just start to hone and you say, hey, this is what's working, and this is efficient, and this is polished too, because you want it to be professional. I mean, you want it to be something that people are gonna look at and go, wow, okay, this person not only sounds like they have it together, but they have a routine, they have a pattern. There's something I've come to expect. It's weird to say this, but as creatives, we also have to make our audiences feel like we're predictable. Like there's something that, hey, either it's we always are releasing episodes 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, or we're always going to have a Saturday live stream, or we're always going to do topics on XYZ for a while. Audiences appreciate that. I mean, they like the fact that you can be more routine, because it gives them that ability to say, hey, I'm looking forward to this. And I don't have to be in this anxious space of when is the next podcast going to come out? When is the next book going to come out kind of deal? Because that turns people off. I mean, that's
we're looking at you, George Martin.
Yeah.
We're looking right at you. We're looking right into your soul.
And Patrick Rothfuss for where it's at, for people who care about that. Yeah.
No kidding, man. No kidding.
No, but that's true. I think, our format and everything is based pretty heavily. I mean, you can see the DNA and the fingerprints all over it of some of the Colin Moriarty podcast. For those who don't know who Colin Moriarty is, he's a PlayStation podcaster from Podcast Beyond back in the IGN days, and then Kind of Funny, and now he does his own thing. But the topics and the inquiries and the listener questions and the quick things, you can kind of see. But the main thing that he's always talked about is if you have a time, you have to be consistent. You have to have a schedule. His stuff posts 12 o'clock on Fridays or whatever. And I've taken that and some of the other advice that you hear from the big names like Rogan said, when you're starting out, you want to keep it between an hour and an hour and a half. And after that, you kind of lose people and that sort of thing. So just taking everything that we've heard from the experts, and trying to incorporate that has been helpful for us for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's good, and you should be doing that, and that's what any creative person should be doing if they're going to be doing podcasting or they're writing a book. And again, I can't say this enough, that is one of the greatest challenges for creative folks, is being disciplined and having a set schedule. Because when you're a creative person, you hate boundaries, you hate barriers, you hate setting up a time and being routine and things like that. But the reality is you just got to get over yourself. You just got to get over yourself and say, all right, from 10 o'clock until midnight or whatever it is, this is when I'm going to have my time to create. This is when I'm going to have time to riff. This is when I'm going to have the time to outline or whatever it is that I'm doing, or edit or revise, and just stick to that. And it's funny how that will actually free you in some sense, because your mind is not going to be elsewhere during the day. You're going to be freeing yourself up to do other things, or if it's something else you have to do, or if you have the day job, or if you have some other priorities in your life, then you're saving that time and that energy for when you actually do need it from that 10 to 12 block or whatever it is. And that's what, again, I've tried to do as much as I can as well whenever I do podcasting, or if I'm, writing my books or whatever.
So we do have one question for you. It comes from Eddie M. He writes in and asks, what are some of your favorite books that have influenced your writing?
Favorite books. First and foremost, Dune by Frank Herbert was the first big sci-fi that I read that just totally blew my mind. I was about 13 years old. Greg won't get this, but Brenton will. Mr. Weichel's Class was when I first read that book. And I remember thinking to myself, I was kind of a closet nerd at the time. Like I didn't want to admit that in public just yet. But I remember going through the books. Remember, he had one whole period where we had to sit and read.
Yeah, I had War of the Worlds.
Yeah, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I remember looking through all the books, and he came over and asked me, and he's just like, well, what do you like? And I said, well, I'm kind of like into video games and science fiction and things like that, honestly. And he goes, why don't you try this then? And pulls out this 500-page, Frank Herbert novel, which I had no idea what was in it. And he's like, I think you might like this. And all I could remember from it is that there were a lot of big words, and there was some cool tech, and there was a planet where people were living thousands of years in the future, which sounded cool, and these giant sandworms that everybody liked to collect their poop or something. Like that was the whole gist. But it was cool, and it was real, and it just totally blew my mind. I went, oh my gosh, someone came up with this? Like, this is crazy that someone actually took the time to write all this. This is before I got into Lord of the Rings. This is before I got into, Narnia or anything else like that that's more mainstream, or Harry Potter, or any of that stuff. It just really was a big impact on me. Is like, wow, someone did this. I could do this. I could sit down and do this maybe someday. So Dune was huge. Ender's Game is a phenomenal read. Say what you will about the sequels. The first one is fantastic. The sequels I enjoyed, but nowhere near the level of the original Ender's Game, the first book in the series.
I like the Bean sequels more than I like the actual Ender's sequels.
Yeah, so I
think they're easier to read.
They are. In fact, I love the fact that Card did that, and he went back and wrote those as like a parallel story, because Ender's Shadow is awesome.
Yeah.
I loved Ender's Shadow. Shadow, I think was Shadow of the Hegemon, I think was the next.
Yeah, that was the second one.
Yeah, and that was really good. I loved all those ones. In fact,
he's kind of, I've fallen off on his stuff. He's like crazy a little bit, I guess, and
to say the least.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that I think the social media age has really hurt, because now he just says whatever. Well, even J.K. Rowling's a little bit, and we've touched on that. You know, they have a platform, and it's like the meme of no one says anything, and J.K. Rowling's is out there going, Hagrid is a.
I know.
Whatever. Just make up your own. Whatever you want to say, make up your own joke.
Yeah, I mean,
but the social media age has not been kind to Orson Scott Card, I don't think.
No, it's not kind to a lot of folks, unfortunately. Just because everybody has a voice now out there that they can.
Right. Well, that's what they say. The best thing about the internet is that everybody has a voice, and the worst thing about the internet is that everybody has a voice.
Exactly. I mean, that's the nuts and bolts of it there, but yeah, so Ender's Game for sure. Ender's Game was actually the book that convinced me to write The Road to Mars.
Okay.
That was
that was my favorite book up until probably college.
I remember you talking about it in our Yearman classes. So there was there is some history there between the two of us. I remember you reading it and going, like, you have to read this, Josh, and I went was das? What? Like wait, what is why? And you were just kind of shook. I think you shook your head at one point and just said, "Shut up," and just read this or something. But Ender's Game was really influential on me, because when I read Card, I thought I sounded just like him. Like, I felt like my writing style was very similar to his, and it was just so simple. Like, there wasn't anything. Like, he doesn't write trying to impress you with big words and long sentences, kind of like a C.S. Lewis would, which I love Lewis as well. But Card's a little bit different. Like, he's more kind of a pragmatic writer. It's very simple, but the way that he tells it is just awesome. I mean, it's just really, really impressive. So that one for sure. Recently, I've been reading Wool by Hugh Howey. And I do like those. I actually do like those books. I haven't finished the first. I didn't realize they were like a compilation of different stories, and very different kind of world. It's intriguing. I heard him interviewed on a podcast called The Knowledge Project. Okay,
this was probably like a year and a half ago. He's done some other stuff. He wrote iZombie, which was turned into a TV show.
Oh, he did?
He wrote that. And he was very, on this podcast, he was very like, almost like anybody can do this. You just have to put your mind to it. And, if you take 20 minutes a day and polish it, eventually you're going to have something you like. And he's like, I remember making my first million was way hard. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Tell me more, Hugh. Totally. Where do I sign up for your TED Talk?
Totally.
But yeah, that's I haven't read those, but I am familiar with him.
Yeah. They're good. I mean, they're good. And again, they're a lot like what Card would write. Not a ton of inundation of detail when it comes to like character design, but the story moves fast. I think that. Maybe our generation relates to that better. It's just like get me going. Don't tell me every intricate detail of the cloth on the person's satchel, or something like that from yesteryear. That's one I've been reading recently. C.S. Lewis actually wrote a space trilogy, a sci-fi space trilogy, which is really interesting. I didn't realize that he had written one, and so I read that and just. That dude's just on another level. So it's one of those book series where you finish it and you sit down and you just go, I think I'm going to have to go vomit or something because I'm so overwhelmed right now. It's just the book was just so meaty. I love Lewis, so that was one that he's definitely been very inspiring to me, and just some of his older works as well have been real good. Just recently, Wool is what I've been reading. Leviathan Wakes by Corey, I think is his last name on that one. I put that down for a while. That's a whole series of books. Pretty dark series. And I never really read young adult fiction for the most part, but I did read Pierce Brown's Red Rising trilogy. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not.
Kind of, it's a. I want to say it got compared to like the Hunger Games and the Maze Runner and stuff like that, but it's not really like it. It's not, but it follows like some teenagers, and the first book caught me. It just did, and I started reading it, and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. I like this. This is kind of a neat world that he's made. So the first book was really good. So I did like that, and that also kind of pushed me over the edge to write a book about Mars, because his book starts on Mars, and I went, gosh dog it, man, if one more person writes a book about Mars, I'm gonna flip my crap if that's the case. So I got to start finishing this as soon as possible. So that's just some of the books that, as of recently, in the.
So before we let you go, we got to talk about your film debut.
Oh gosh, really? We gotta talk about this?
Yeah, we have to.
Gosh. All right.
So we did a 10th grade. We were in German class together.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me tell you how much German I know. I took the German placement test in college, and I did so well on it. They told me, well, you don't need to take a language, but if you decide to, you might want to take a crack at Spanish. But anyway, we did this video. It was for a personal trainer. I was the personal trainer, and you were to me, it's hard to boil down the story into 90 seconds, something like that. But to me, I would say, it was very heavily influenced in Dragon Ball Z lore.
It was.
Where you have somebody who's kind of a chump. And he's getting beat up by a lesser foe, and through the magic of poorly translated German, because I don't think anything that we said was correct. I think it was.
Of course not. There's no way.
Nonsense.
I think we made up some words as we went at one point.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was probably half German, Portuguese, and maybe a little bit of Gaelic. I don't know, but it was. But it was set to Eye of the Tiger. That was the best part.
Yeah.
And then this. I hope that somebody has that on tape.
I was going to say, I wish that was on tape. I'd love to see it.
It was a moving moment in my life that made me realize I had creative dreams that I needed to follow.
There you go. And that's where the spark started.
And I knew that I would never do it in German, though. That was the thing. I would have to stick to English for the rest of my life, because there's no way I could ever do German.
Right.
Which, not to get off topic on a tangent, but have you guys covered the show Dark at all on anything yet? Have you watched it? Have you guys watched it at all?
Is that a Will Smith?
No, it's on Netflix. It's 3 seasons, and it's German. I'm surprised you guys haven't found this yet. I'm so disappointed right now.
I'll be honest, I watch very little TV. He's the TV guy. Okay. I mean, as long as it's British and it's baking.
Yeah,
I don't watch.
I work a lot of hours. I really just have time for English people to talk gently to me. But I'm always up for recommendations.
Okay, so this is my recommendation to you, Greg, since Brenton is kind of on the fence. The show's called Dark. It's on Netflix. There's 3 seasons. It initially, when it came out, was compared to Stranger Things. It was called like the German Stranger Things, but it's so much. Yeah, but it's like 100 times better. If you can, it's and watch it with subtitles. Don't do the dumb dub. Just don't do it. You got to watch it with subtitles. I don't want to ruin anything.
I'm intrigued. There's a child. Stranger Things.
Yeah, there's a child that is kidnapped. And there's a small town. There's a power plant there with like a crazy history that's going on, but that's not even the tip of the iceberg of the story. So
sounds like a Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's this group called Umbrella, and there's like a virus, and they're going to a place. There's like an animal raccoon city or something.
Listen,
like
when
that.
I saw when Corona started and the doctor of the head doctor of the CDC was named Chris Redfield, I'm like, come on, man.
I did.
You should know how to take care of this. You've had plenty of training. That's a Resident Evil joke for.
It's a great one.
Oh man,
for people who aren't nerds.
Speaking of which, Resident Evil, man, that is definitely one game that I grew up with for sure. That was my brothers play that game, Brent, and my younger brothers, the ones that you kind of like just associate as a single person. They
right.
They definitely got into that as well. I mean, playing the
new one. There's one coming out for the new systems, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8. But the new one is you played in VR on PlayStation, and I don't want to mess with that because I don't sleep much as it is, and I don't know that I would sleep. I don't do well with scary stuff. I never played the Resident Evil games really. I don't play scary games. I can only imagine playing that in VR. I mean, like the Batman VR game scared me, and I'm, I'm kind of a chump.
And I wasn't going to use that verbiage or
That's
whatever or anything like that. Yeah, they no way I would do that in the VR. Absolutely not. I like to sleep once in a while.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I too am not a big scary movie.
Somebody's oil lights on.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a big scary movie guy either.
No.
But I do enjoy.
Hocus Pocus is the scariest movie I'll watch.
If that's the case, then you should stay away from just about 90% of any scary film that's out there. If that's
that'll do it.
But there are good thrillers though. I mean, psychological thrillers that can really that can pique my interest. But at the same time, like for instance, stories like Silence of the Lambs, I find to be incredibly interesting. But I would never want to like watch it for fun. You know, like
Are you in the market for a new house?
Am I? No.
The Buffalo Bill house is for sale.
No,
You said it's in. Where's it at?
It's just outside of Pittsburgh. I can't remember the city name off the top of my head now, but it's just outside of Pittsburgh.
Sonia, not
it's
Sonia.
I thought it was
I don't
called.
remember.
I don't know. It's outside of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Did you know they filmed The Road outside of Pittsburgh in Homestead?
Really?
Yeah, parts of it.
No kidding.
Which makes sense because if I was gonna film a movie about an apocalyptic wasteland, I'd probably choose Pittsburgh.
Choose Pittsburgh.
Jeez.
Which again, if for those who are listening, The Road to Mars, they do travel through Pittsburgh. There is a part in there where they do travel through Pittsburgh through the Three Rivers.
Is it a one way going the wrong direction road to Mars?
Of course it is.
Built on a
End up in the
triangle.
river.
Yeah. They get to see what the world looks like at the Three Rivers.
It's funny because I feel like a lot of fiction these days runs through Pittsburgh. There's a level in The Last of Us that takes place literally like right off the 279 ramp. Like you can see the signs in the background for Boulevard of the Allies and all that stuff, or Fort Duquesne and everything. It's just a horrible place, and I think that it lends itself to
So mean.
I know.
dystopian society.
What did Pittsburgh do to you?
I know. He just.
That's a topic. That's a whole show. That's a whole episode.
Well, he is part and parcel to the tribe.
That's true. But it's not like the pirates are doing anything to hurt the tribe.
Well, okay, so since we're here,
speaking of tangents,
when I was like 6 or 7, we went to my dad took my entire family to a game at Three Rivers Stadium.
Here's the story.
And
Yep,
that's exactly what it is. And it went into extra innings, and my mom said I only paid for 9. And she made us leave. It was the last time she ever went to a game, I can tell you that. And as we're on our way out, you walk down the ramps to leave the stadium.
Yeah.
And the Pirate Parrot is coming up. And I didn't like that. And, I didn't want a hug from the Pirate Parrot. And he made me give him a hug, and now I hate Pittsburgh forever.
If that had happened to you at this age, I would be questioning it. But the fact that you were only 6 or 7, I guess. I guess
that makes sense.
Well, and I think I developed like some type of Stockholm syndrome from it, because when Greg and I went to the opening of the New York stadiums, what year was that? 07? 08?
I think it was 08. That seems right.
Yeah, I don't remember. I just remember the Yankees game and the Indians beating the Yankees 22-4. But the next day at the Mets, I missed most of the game because I was looking for Mr. Met all day.
We found him.
No, I didn't find him. I have one blurry picture of him. I have a blurry picture of him like he's Bigfoot.
Like he's Bigfoot or something.
Yeah, it's just out of focus. Running through the crowd. Hey, Mr. Med, hey.
Was he walking sideways, like looking back at you at the same time?
Exactly. That's the exact photo I have of him. It's him looking backwards, sideways. It's incredible. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
He's just a Mr. Redlegs ripoff anyway. Mr. Med can go jump in the
Easy.
harbor.
They might want to sponsor us.
I know.
They're who, the Mets?
I don't know. You never know.
Who's their owner?
I don't know.
They just got bought.
It's not.
I don't know. Frankie Lindor's playing for them next year.
It's not Darryl Strawberry. I know that. I know he's not the partial owner of the Mets or anything like that.
Their starting shortstop's going to be Francisco Lindor next season.
The Mets?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Really?
I know he's not going to be the starting shortstop for the Cleveland Indians.
No, there's no way. You could tell it. You could tell in his mannerisms during the playoffs. He was done. Yeah. He's like, I'm out of Cleveland, man. I'm done with this place. I've had enough of Jose and Carlos
being
Santana.
Better than him.
Yeah, being better than him and
the GOAT, the Dominican GOAT.
Steve Cohen is the owner of the Mets.
Steve Cohen, okay. Yeah. Of the Cohen brothers, the movie.
Of the Cohen brothers, yeah, exactly.
Right. No Country for Old Men. I said it right this time.
You did.
Last time it was Old Country for No Men. All right, listen. I know you had a birthday party, a toddler birthday party, and those are exhausting. So
I did.
We appreciate you coming on. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Maybe we could do it again sometime.
Yeah, Brandon, Greg, this was awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. It was Brendan, I was trying to think before I got on this evening, when was the last time you and I even shared
your graduation party?
It might have been, actually.
Yeah.
I think
because I didn't go to the 10-year reunion because I don't hang out with those people when it's for free. I'm not gonna pay to hang out. I'm not gonna pay to hang out with you.
So funny. Can I just one last quick story about that is I took my now wife to that reunion. And the funniest part about that reunion, aside from the fact that I was going to propose to her that night, I did not, because what happened is when she came back to PA with me, since I live in Ohio now, I don't live in Pennsylvania. When we crossed the border to come back to Mercer for the reunion, I told her, just wear something casual. You know, we're going out somewhere. And here, Leanne Humes had messaged the prez of our graduating class. Messaged me and said, hey, it's at the cabin club thing or whatever. Hope you dress nice. And I just went, excuse me? So I literally was throwing on my father's old work clothes and his nice suit, and my now wife was wearing my mother's outfit going to the class reunion. And so we're at this class reunion. She's wearing my mother's outfit, like a nice outfit that my mom would wear. Thankfully, they're like the same size. And then I'm wearing my dad's outfit. I'm wearing like his shoes. I'm wearing his belt.
Did he let you drive the Corvette?
No, dude. It's another area of just complete depression and doesn't exist. It doesn't exist for me. So I just to bring it in for landing. Then I had the ring with me, and I remember looking at her in the car and just going, she's dressed just like my mother. I can't do this right now. There's just no way. I can't do it. I can't do it. There's no way. So I waited till like the next day afterwards and everything. And my wife and I joke about it now. Like, can you believe that I made you wear my mother's clothing to go to my 10-year class reunion? And she goes, yeah, I don't understand why you did that to me.
Hey, 20's coming up.
I know. Don't remind me, man. That's crazy. It's crazy. That's crazy. Greg, you graduated in 03 too, right?
Yeah, we're all in the same class, and I'll never go back there.
I'll never go back there.
You may never come back east of the Mississippi.
Oh no, I have baseball stadiums to see, Brenton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Man, that's just wild. Yeah. That's wild. I mean, I if I were out far west, and the farthest west I've ever been is Arizona, and Arizona was like the hottest place on the planet. I swear.
Oh, it's the hottest place I've ever been to.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. Like I literally felt like I was like breathing in stove air. Like, if I was standing over a stove, I'm just sucking in air like I was over a stove or something. It was just nuts.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun for fair-skinned folk like myself.
No.
Fat fair-skinned folk.
Just stick to the Nordic regions of the Midwest, and you'll be okay, Brenton.
Well, I just got to grow my hair out. I'm basically Fat Thor at this point. That's what I'm hoping. If my kids have an Avengers birthday party, I can be Thor. I'll just take my shirt off and carry a beer around.
Well, if you ever accomplish that, I will look forward to seeing that on the internet somewhere.
No, that won't happen.
That won't happen.
That's not gonna. So, we don't do this.
Well, awesome.
Yeah, 20 years is right around the bend, and I don't anticipate that I will grace that reunion with my presence either. Maybe we'll see.
Maybe we could do
I think for like half a second. Yeah. I thought about going because it was like wasn't it the Grove City Country Club?
It was nice,
and that's like 5 minutes from where I live. So,
yeah, you could do it. You could do it, man. There was actually a lot. There were a lot of people there, which I was kind of surprised by. Which it was interesting, but yeah, it was a nice time for what it's worth. A lot of people got married. That it was kind of like, oh, okay, you're married, that's cool, and had kids now and everything, and that was nice. But yeah, maybe we could do a live stream there. Both our podcasts, 20th reunion. we could be there for the live stream.
What a show!
What a show that would be.
Only if your wife is wearing your mom's clothes.
I know. It's like, oh no. I think it's probably one of my wife's greatest fears is that she doesn't listen to any of my podcasts. Okay, she just doesn't. And she does support me though, so I should say that. But it's just funny how I always tell her, I said, you basically just have all this trust in me that I don't tell any incriminating stories about us or you on the internet with anything that I say. And she's like, oh, well, that's funny.
Yeah. See, that's kind of, my mom, I just, the gloves are off because she told me, she's like, I don't even know what a podcast is.
In that case, ignorance is bliss, and just have fun. There you go.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my friend, we appreciate you coming on.
Yep.
We had a great time.
Yep. This was great,
and
man.
Hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Greg, it was nice meeting you, man.
Nice meeting you too, Josh. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming on.
Keep this guy in line, will you?
I'll try my best, but who knows?
Who knows? All right. Later, gentlemen.
Indeed. All righty.
Good night.
So that was only 2 of our 6-pack. We still got 4 more cans
maybe
to
there's
go.
Gonna be like a quick hitter. It's like a quick hit 6-pack now.
We got to do Mando.
Well, Mando, yeah. This is where I bring out the notebook like I'm Tony Kornheiser.
There you go. All right, number 3, Mandalorian Chapter 10, The Passenger. Returning from the wasteland of Tatooine to continue his quest to find more Mandalorians, Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, takes on a passenger delivery quest when he is asked to deliver Frog Lady, seriously, that's her name, in the credits, and her container of species-saving eggs to her husband in the next system. Due to the fragility of the eggs, Mando is forced to travel sub-light speed. Naturally, this creates some issues, as he is effectively pulled over in the form of 2 New Republic X-Wings for a busted tail light. Mando makes a break for it and crash lands on Maldo Crest, the same ice planet he visited in Season 1. He and Frog Lady and the child are attacked by the spider-looking thing, presumably from Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets, but are ultimately saved by the X-Wings that tried to pull them over to begin with. After agreeing to go their separate ways and to get his transponder fixed, Din Djarin continues his quest to find more Mandalorians, and the credits roll. So that is kind of the summary. What did you think about the episode? We do have one question about it, but let me get your thoughts on the episode first.
I like how Baby Yoda did nothing to help in this episode. I think that was something I like, where he's still, I'm the child, but Baby Yoda, where it's like, oh, he is still young. And he is still like, that kind of, if you do bring a child along, mischief can happen. And, you know, he did nothing to help, and I thought it was funny. I also like how he ate a bento box of food at one point, and that was cute to me. He was a little, like, he kept disturbing things, and he was disturbing the Force, but in a different way.
So let me, before we get to the question, I'll get to the question because I think it kind of ties into what you're saying. This is from Jared L. He writes in and says, I'd like to say that I'm enjoying the podcast very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I read that the Mandalorian is getting some backlash from Baby Yoda eating the Frog Lady's eggs. The child eating children, I think, is what the article said. What are your thoughts on this? As I thought it was funny and obviously cute.
I thought it was funny at first, and then actually, like, the last one kind of got me, like, I was really, like, at that point, I was actually, like, annoyed. I, like, screamed. Both Janie and I both kind of screamed at the TV, like, what are you doing, Baby Yoda? What are you doing?
Listen, I eat omelets all the time.
Yeah,
so I don't have a problem with it. I'm gonna have eggs tomorrow for breakfast.
Let her have her babies, like, you know. But it's just that's what he does. And like, you know, looking back on it now, it's actually funnier to me now. But in the moment, I was just like, he will get you food. Mando will help you out. You don't need to do this. You're just up to hijinks. In the moment, I got a little annoyed at the end. But now I look back on it, it cracks me up, and you know, it is what it is with him.
So for the episode. This episode was a no for me, dog. I think we're to the point now where this is a character establishing episode where it's like, oh, the Mandalorian does have a heart. Din Djarin does have a heart. Well, we knew that because he's protecting this orphan Yoda kid. So we don't need an episode in season 2 showing us that he does have a conscience. He has a conscience. We understand that. We haven't seen Moff, whatever, that Giancarlo Stanton plays. It left us on a cliffhanger with maybe it's Boba Fett, maybe it's not. After episode 1, which was awesome. Episode 1 was awesome. I mean, I know I had my criticisms for it, but it was much more entertaining than this episode. I just felt like this was like the equivalent of playing a video game and going on a quest where it's like, hey, deliver this package to the shopkeeper in the next town. I just felt like this was a wasted opportunity to move the story along in a meaningful way. And they just took us on this tangent to, again, another planet that we've already been to. That he went to this planet in the first season. I just think that this was a waste. Like, this was kind of like a waste of 35 minutes to me. Like, there were some funny parts, obviously, you know, with Baby Yoda eating the egg and the rocket launcher at the beginning of the episode where they used the tripwire and then he gave him the rocket launcher and then he, like, remoted it and knocked the guy off and it just kind of, like, floated back to him. And that was fine and that was funny. But I think just as a whole, if I had to give this an out of 10 score, I'd give it like a 5.
I would say it was a more of the Disney-fication of Star Wars episode. I would say same score, 5. I think they kind of needed an episode where Baby Yoda doesn't help because he didn't do anything. And I think that's maybe part of it. I think maybe that was part of where they wanted to go too, where like there were times where you're like, do something. Mando needs your help, and he's just eating an egg. Yeah. And, you know, I think that was maybe, or eating a spider, exactly. Like, he caused a lot of problems instead of helping at all. I mean, he causes problems anyhow just because he's with him, but it was one of those things where he is still young and he's, you know, he's 50 or whatever, but he's young in the Yoda years.
Right.
And I think that was more of the point of the episode, was to kind of prove that, like, Mando sometimes just has to get through this himself and can't have, you know, the child help him out.
One of the cool Easter eggs that I wanted to point out that I had read about was Mr. Mandible was the ant-like creature that was playing cards in the cantina. And that was kind of an Ant-Man nod. This episode was directed by the director of the 2 Ant-Man movies. The name of the guy escapes me. There are some like heavy hitters coming up for directors of the series outside of just Jon Favreau, including episode 4, which will be directed by Carl Weathers himself, Mr. Action Jackson. Wow. Apollo Creed is going to be sitting in the directorial chair. I can't wait to see what kind of hijinks that he throws in there. But just kind of getting back to the, I mean, like Frog Lady, like that was her name. At one point, she took over the droid, and she couldn't have said, like, hey, you know, my name's Beth Smith or whatever. You know, it's just that they were cool with Frog Lady being the name. You know, the X-Wings were cool. Seeing them move into attack formation was cool. We had seen that, of course, in the first trailer. I mean, overall, I mean, it's fine. It's at the end of the day, I look forward to watching The Mandalorian every week, and anything they give me is going to be good. But I think at this point, you know, the first season was such a pleasant surprise that some of those episodes that were sort of these fetch quest type side quest episodes were a little bit more easy to overlook. But now I think the expectation's a little bit higher, and I don't want to see episodes like this. I want to see the story moved along in a meaningful way on a week-to-week basis.
Peyton Reed is the director, just
Thank
so
you.
we had that in there. Yeah,
Peyton Reed. Mm-hmm. Number 4, Alex Trebak, the famed host of Jeopardy, passed away over the weekend at the age of 80 after an extended battle with pancreatic cancer. Trebak hosted the popular trivia game show beginning in 1984. And he was universally loved and continued to host Jeopardy after announcing his diagnosis in 2019, despite second-year pancreatic cancer survival rate being around 7%. His final Jeopardy, pun moderately intended, will air on Christmas Day and promises to be a tearjerker. I'm not going to lie, when I wrote this, I was getting a little dusty.
Yeah, when I read it, I got a little dusty. And I've heard this a couple times. I'm not saying anything new, but, you know, when can you say anything new unless you're just directly in the moment? I think Alex Trebek is probably the only completely universally liked host of a game show. And I'll also say that Jeopardy is, at this point, the only game show where, like, you just have to be better than everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason Ken Jennings won, whatever,
right.
20.
And I just think there's something to be said about, to do what he's done, for him to transition like he has, where, you know, if you watch like the older episodes, because they were showing those a couple months ago, and how he's transitioned to where he raps and he's with pop culture, and that's what's really cool, is that, like, he realized he had to stay up with the changing times, because there's people like us watching it. Like, I grew up with Jeopardy, and I still watch Jeopardy. It's not as much. I mean, I would love to still have it be appointment viewing, but just the way my life goes now, it's harder for me to watch it consistently. But, you know, if it's on, I'm down and I'm watching it. And there's nothing like getting the final Jeopardy answer. I mean, that is the question. There's nothing like that's a nice little rush of when you get that. And, you know, obviously he'll be replaced. I've heard rumors that Ken Jennings will be the host.
I wouldn't hate that.
Right, exactly. But I think Alex Trebek is, you know, Bob Barker was replaced, and that was definitely weird. But I think of all the hosts of any show that has been on for years, you're never ever going to have another Alex Trebek. You know, we're sad to see him go, but what a life! I mean, if you could be anything, to be the Alex Trebek of your field, it's hard to beat that.
I would say, you know, I grew up watching Jeopardy, and we had that weird thing with our cable where we would get Pittsburgh and Youngstown, and Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune aired in different time slots on different networks. So it was on at 7 in Pittsburgh and 7:30 on Youngstown. And I would come down for the 7:30 one, and my dad had already watched the Pittsburgh one, and he would get all the answers right. And I wasn't sure why he wasn't taking the test, because he knew everything, apparently.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but, you know, and I just remember, you know, learning so much and learning so many facts and trivia questions and things like that. And I took the Jeopardy online test a couple years ago. It's hard. You know, I'm a pretty intelligent guy. I know a lot of trivia, but they throw so many different subjects at you. You know, I think, like you said, Final Jeopardy. For me, it's Double Jeopardy, because the questions in Double Jeopardy it gets so specific. In regular Jeopardy, you might get sports. Mm-hmm. In Double Jeopardy, you're getting major golfer wins from the 1930s, and it's just like, okay, I guess I need to sharpen up on that. You know, and that was sort of the thing that I took away from taking the Jeopardy test online, was that I know a lot about a lot of things, but there's so much specific stuff. And like Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter and those guys that have won large amounts of money. You know, I just can't imagine they just have to be reading all the time, you know, and just absorbing everything. It's so impressive whenever somebody can run the table in any category in Double Jeopardy. But he will be missed, and I am interested to see. I hadn't heard that about Ken Jennings, but I'll definitely be tuning in on Christmas Day to watch the last Jeopardy with Alex on it. Speaking of Christmas,
I was say your transition. I was like, that was good. Yeah,
the NBA returns on December 22nd with a 72-game season. Many vets, including Finals MVP LeBron James, stated that they will not show up on a regular basis and may possibly not show up until a month into the season. With the season having just ended due to the COVID pandemic and training camp likely to start at the end of this month, it is reasonable argument that the players who made a deep playoff run would require more recovery time. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have not played a game since 2018 when LeBron left for LA, should be well rested and ready to go.
I'm shocked by this, to be honest. But then I found out that it was mostly based off money, and
sure, well, as is everything.
As is everything. And they were going to lose a huge chunk. The numbers have varied quite a bit from what I've heard, so I'm not going to throw numbers out there because there's no reason to have a correction over something like this. When it's just, do you want to have more money or do you want to have less money players?
Right. Well,
that's at the end of the day, that's what it is.
And that's the thing is, and people are going to say, and this was a big thing with baseball, and people are going to say, oh, well, Bryce Harper's making $400 million. LeBron James is making da-da-da-da-da-da. When the season got shortened in baseball, your minor league guys, your taxi squad guys, your veteran minimum guys were making less than what I was.
Right.
And that's, it's not like these guys are out there starving by any means, but it is, don't think of it as taking money out of LeBron James' pocket. Think of it as money, or Anthony Davis or Kevin Durant or any of these guys that are on max contracts. Think of it as taking money out of the pocket of, pick a Plumlee. You know what I mean?
Right. I think the thing too is just to look at, like, say you were told the next day, anyone listening out there, like, oh, well, we have to cut part of your job and you're now making 60% less. Even if you're making millions of dollars, you're then out millions of dollars. And it's just one of those weird things that happens. And it's hard to compare, thousands to what, the normal people are making to the millions. But still, when you're like, oh, no, I have this huge contract, but I'm not making $30 million this year. I'm only going to make 10. Like, that's a weird thing to transition to. And I get it. I'll be happy it's back. It'll be weird because obviously people are going to play all the time. I don't necessarily believe that LeBron's going to sit out a month because he loves being out there. I think he'll kind of do I don't want to say necessarily load management. I don't want to. Yeah. I don't necessarily be load management. I think he'll want to show up for games that seem bigger than others. I think it'll actually be the reverse thing where, like, the TNT games he might show up for, but like the Friday games that are only going to be on the local network, he's not going to be on. I think it's going to be things like that where he's going to showcase himself here and there. And it's 72 games, and I wouldn't be shocked if he plays like 55, but that's probably all he needs to play.
I just don't think that it's... I know they wanted to start before Christmas because Christmas Day is a big NBA day, and the money thing and everything like that. But I mean, Jimmy Butler was gassed, man, at the end of that.
Oh yeah.
And it just, is it going to be enough turnaround time for these guys that made deep runs? The Lakers aren't young. That's not a young team. There's a lot of, Rondo, LeBron, Danny Green, Dwight Howard. Those guys aren't, they're no spring chickens. And it's a long season. I know that they talked about trying to do as few back-to-backs, and they've all but gotten rid of the 4 games in 5 days things. But it's going to be a lot, and I think it's going to maybe favor, at least in the regular season, favor some of the younger teams like maybe Utah and Denver and some of the teams like that. But we'll see, and I'm interested to see. I think I read somewhere that the free agency is going to start like the 20th. And when the draft is when?
It is, I want to say November 19th, just off the top of my head.
After.
Yeah.
So we'll see. There's going to be a lot to talk about here with the NBA, coming up. Not that this is a sports podcast or an NBA podcast, but, the NBA, I think, is probably the most popular sport, or the most popular league worldwide.
Yeah. I also think it's the sport that you and I both know enough that we can have a pretty good back and forth around, because I don't get to watch a lot of NFL. You don't really pay attention to college football. MLB, we care about our teams, but I think the NBA is where we can really...
the NBA is such a star-driven league.
Right. I also think the NBA is just really easy to talk about.
It is.
Because you don't have to go into deep dive numbers. You don't, in the NFL, you have to come up with new topics all the time. I think the NBA kind of it offers you content even if you're not looking for it.
Would you say that you don't have to have a great deal of depth?
Boom.
Number 6, Johnny Depp has been dropped as Grindelwald from the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them Harry Potter spin-off series. In a statement released on Instagram, Depp, who had recently lost a libel case in an ongoing domestic violence issue with actress Amber Heard, confirmed he had been asked by Warner Brothers to resign from the role, which he did. It is worth noting author and Harry Potter license and property owner J.K. Rowling voiced her support for keeping Depp in the role. It should also be noted that Johnny Depp is going to be permitted to keep his salary for Fantastic Beasts 3, which stars Eddie Redmayne, which sounds like a rapper, Eddie Redmayne. It's in production. It has been delayed out of 2021 and will now release summer of 2022. If this just this was just announced very shortly before we started recording tonight. Mads Mikkelsen is going to
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, I wanted to see.
Mads Mikkelsen is going to be replacing Johnny Depp in the role of Grindelwald. David S. from the Great Thoroughfare of Carn City writes it. It says, I really like Johnny Depp as Grindelwald, but he seems like a miserable person in real life. He's a pretty great actor. Where do you think he goes from here? Dave also asked for our impressions on the game set in the Harry Potter universe, Hogwarts Legacy, that's coming to PS5 and Xbox Series X. So let's go back to the movie thing and talk about Johnny Depp losing his job, but still getting paid for it. That's a hell of a severance package. And then if you want to talk about Mads Mikkelsen, that's fine. And where do you think Johnny will go from here?
I mean, I only saw the first one, and I thought it was good. The second
he wasn't in that one, though, was he?
No, right, yeah. So I haven't even seen him in this, to be fair. I don't think Johnny Depp has really done anything of note, in my personal opinion, since maybe the first or second, Pirates of the Caribbean. He isn't someone that I actually, I agree, he was a great actor. Those were paychecks. This was another paycheck, so I struggle with him. He was a great actor. I don't know if there's anything out there. I don't know if he has an Iron Man, resurgence like Robert Downey.
The issue is that he's not, because all of this crap with Amber Heard, he's not going to get anything. It's going to be years before he gets that opportunity.
Robert Downey Jr. was drugs. It wasn't allegations of what happened with Amber Heard. So it's It wasn't anything like that. Drugs are drugs, but you can come back, you can sober up, and then people are kind of rooting for you. That thing, they want you to see it. And by all accounts, Johnny Depp is a nice guy, or Johnny Depp is not a nice guy. By all accounts, Robert Downey Jr. is a nice guy. Johnny Depp is not. And if you've ever read the Rolling Stone interview from a couple years ago, it doesn't shine any light on him either, where he's just drunk the entire time, and it's kind of a mess. So
yeah, he's like a character actor, I think. He kind of plays, or he's got to be, or like a method actor, whatever. He's got that, he was great when he was younger, and he was great in the first couple Pirates movies, and then that just franchise turned into just polishing a giant golden turd. And I think they're going to reboot it, completely reboot it, which is, to me, unnecessary. I think that it stuck around 2 movies longer than it needed to. And I love the first 2. I think that, especially the first one.
First one's so good.
The Black Pearl. But whatever, Yeah. I was sitting here racking my brain man, he's got to have done something. The only other thing that I could think of was Public Enemies, but that wasn't very good either with Christian Bale.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Where does he go from here? I don't think he goes anywhere. I think he goes on the rocks for a while.
Yeah.
I think maybe he needs to sit on the bench for a little bit, sit on the sidelines and get himself together and not be such an awful person, miserable person, as David S. from the sprawling metropolis of Carn City said. But, maybe he does have a comeback in him. I mean, everybody loves, like you said, everybody loves a good redemption story. Now, as far as the Hogwarts thing, the game goes, I did write down some notes. I watched the trailer today. It's called Hogwarts Legacy. It takes place about 100 years before the events of the Harry Potter series. It looks great. It looks polished. It looks, the graphics look good. But here's the thing is, it's slated for a 2021 release date. This is being made by Avalanche Games, which is different than Avalanche Studios. Avalanche Studios is famous for the Just Cause series and the Mad Max games and some other stuff like that. This Avalanche is famous for making the Disney Infinity Toys to Life series, which got shut down by Disney. So that kind of shows you the quality of that studio. This thing is 2021 release. Here's my 2 things on this. I want to see some gameplay before I get truly excited about it. and I guarantee you, put it on the board, this game's getting delayed out of 2021. This thing's been secretly, it's been like one of the worst kept secrets in the video game industry for the last 4 or 5 years that this game is being made. And they showed it off, and like I said, it looks good. A lot of games everything looks good these days.
I say everything looks good, but that doesn't really mean anything. This does look great. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it looks cool, but there's no gameplay. There's no gameplay to speak of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with anything, until gameplay happens, I'm really not interested because, like you said, everything looks good, and you can make anything look good or seem like it's going to be cool, but until we have gameplay, until we actually get an actual set in stone release date, I tend not to get excited about stuff, especially in the time of now with the way movies and everything work out. You just don't know, and until I get that set date, I just don't really get excited about things like this anymore.
Well, and the other thing is that this game is up against a lot of the controversy over the J.K. Rowling stuff, and people are saying we're not going to buy this game because she's saying crazy things. I think that if it comes out and it's good, then people are going to. This is an opportunity to sort of speak with your wallet.
Right.
But we'll see. All right, clip of the week time. Do you have it?
I do.
Okay, this is going to be a.
Oh, I like this already.
Alex Trebak tribute.
Oh, perfect. Here we go. Let me turn up the volume.
So as you said,
200, please.
Oh my goodness.
Started from the
Bottom,
bottom,
now
now
we're
we're
here.
here.
This is so good. I like how it's actually edited very well.
What is Drake? Good. Back to you,
This
Julia.
is so good.
Let's wrap for 600, please.
Buy a chopper and have the doctor on speed dial. I guess Mad City. Julia.
Who is Kendrick Lamar?
Right.
Let's wrap for 800, please.
6 foot, 7 foot.
It's actually making me sad now.
a little bit sad, but at the same time, like you
also
said,
amazing,
he's excited to be with it.
Finisher.
Yeah.
Lily.
Who's
Yeah.
Lil Wayne?
Lil Wayne, yeah.
This next
Julia?
one's
Yes.
my
Let's
favorite.
wrap for 400, please.
They mad, they ain't famous. They mad, they still nameless.
No, this isn't
But we
this. The
still
next one.
hood famous. Yeah, we still hood famous. Julia?
Who is Kanye West?
Yes, and I hope I don't get an email from him.
Let's wrap for 1,000.
This one's the good. Yeah.
Panda.
Oh, nice.
Panda. Panda, 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 panda. Lily.
Who is Designer?
Designer, yes, and that takes you up to 2,600. I was just getting into this rap thing. I'm not too good at it, but I was getting into it.
I'm going to give you a bonus clip of the week. Type into your YouTube search bar, Alex Trebak calls contestant a loser.
I think I've actually seen this before, but
okay,
yeah.
I saw it the episode that it aired.
I think I did too, actually.
This poor
Oh,
girl.
yeah. I remember, I've seen this before too.
Nerdcore hip-hop. It's
Nerdcore hip-hop.
Yeah. It's people who identify as nerdy, rapping about the things they love, video games, science fiction, having a hard time meeting romantic partners. It's really catchy and fun.
Losers, in other words.
Losers, in other words.
Oh,
Alex Trebak
man.
was a savage. The
Love
thing I liked the most about Alex Trebak was when an answer would come up and no one would get it, and he would be so smug. And he didn't know that. He's got Johnny Gilbert or whatever producer in his ear telling him what the answer is, but he was like, come on, morons.
Well, he actually, I heard a couple times this week that he actually would study the questions before, and he actually knew 65% of the answers, just because he had to do it over and over again, repetition. Right. But he wanted to make sure that the answers / questions were actually good enough for the show. So the longer he was there, the more workload he put into it. He just didn't show up, which I thought was cool to know too, and not shocking.
When I was looking for clips, the other one that I saw was great, but you kind of have to see this one. I mean, usually the clip of the week, you can kind of hear it over your mic in the background or whatever, but he came out with no pants on for one of the episodes, and it was it was like Battle of the Decades or whatever, and it was Rudder and Jennings and one other guy, and he comes out with no pants on. And he's got the suit coat and the shirt and tie and the high black socks, dress socks. And he looks at those guys and he's like, I thought we were doing this no pants thing. Where are you guys at?
That
was great. Yeah. Take a look, look up some of Alex Trebek's greatest moments on YouTube. All right, quick hitter time. Competitive lightsaber duels declared a real sport.
Why not?
Yeah. What isn't a sport these days?
What isn't? Yeah. A winner and a loser. That's all you need.
Yeah. Well, if you ain't first, you're last.
Exactly.
Square Enix reported heavy losses for the Avengers game developed by Crystal Dynamics. They posted nearly $48 million in losses for this fiscal quarter. And this was one of the topics we touched on about trying to be original when we were talking with Josh. The Avengers game is what's called a game of service, which what that means is that the objective of the developer is to continue to put content into the game to keep you as the player coming back. The first patch that came out for this game fixed 1,000 bugs. 1,000. They released this game and it was broken. And people paid money for it and then they never came back. And so to see $48 million in losses, the other thing was this game was in development for a long time. So for them to put a lot of money in it, and the problem is this is a very crowded space. You have games like Destiny, like Fortnite, like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, The Division, other games like that. And I think that they were banking on this being a hit because it was the Avengers. And I think it did sell well originally. It charted on NPD on the top 20 list for the first month or two. But games like this are trying to get you to buy microtransactions. They're trying to get you to buy, spend $3 and get Captain America's other suit. They're trying to get you to spend $3 and get another pair of pants for the Hulk or whatever. And I think that the game was so broken at launch and people played through it, and it, from all accounts, it was fine. But there wasn't anything to go back to, and it was broken, so people didn't want to go back to it. So they lost money. And this is a case of, games are a little bit different than movies. You can make a movie, you can turn a movie around in a year or two. Sometimes these games take 5-6 years. So you start on something and it seems like a good idea, and then you get pot committed and it's not a good idea and you end up losing a boatload of cash like this.
And also, wonder if maybe there was just some Avengers fatigue, too, with this.
Yeah, it probably came out 2 years too late.
Yeah, I would say if this came out when, Endgame came out, then this probably goes gangbusters no matter how many problems there are. But it's just there's nothing happening right now. And I don't know, it took forever to come out. There was probably some fatigue, what happened in the movies. You see Captain America and you're like, well, that's not Chris Evans.
Right, I think that's part of the
problem.
They weren't able to get the licenses for the MCU people. So it's like Captain America looks like J.J. Watt.
Right.
I mean, he's fine. He'd be a good Captain America, but Chris Evans is Captain America.
Right, Chris Evans is Captain America.
Right.
Forever.
The Xbox Series X and Series S is out today. PS5 launches Friday. We're going to do a deep dive as topic number 1 and topic number 2 into both of these machines on next week's episode when they're both out in the wild. Positive reviews so far, positive feedback online in various corners of the internet for the Xbox, but we'll get into the weeds with those things a little bit more. And I will say, though, as I predicted, that retailers have these for sale throughout the day at different times. Walmart, Target, Best Buy. I think there were some on Amazon as well. So I would say if you are looking at a PS5, then Friday might be the day, Greg Way. Retailers have said that they will not be, at least for the foreseeable future, until demand has been somewhat satiated, selling the consoles in stores, at least for the PlayStation 5. This is due to not wanting people to be camping out in the stores, what with COVID continuing to be an issue. With that being said, rumor has it that retailers may roll out the next wave of available consoles at staggered intervals on launch day. I saw an article where it said Walmart is going to put a little bit at a time on at 12, at 3, at 6, at 9. So if you're listening to this when it posts on Friday in the morning and you're trying to get a PS5, check Walmart around noon, 3 o'clock, what have you, because they may have some of those available.
Yeah, do you know anyone that has one lined up already? I don't know anyone.
Not personally. I mean, I know there's some different people on Twitter and stuff that I follow. I don't know anybody personally that's had any luck with these things. But the thing that pisses me off about that is like some of the podcasters I listen to are like, oh yeah, we pre-ordered 4. And I'm like, well, and the one guy said, he's like, well, I'm gonna give one to my nephew as a gift, and I'm gonna give, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But if you're getting one for your upstairs TV and your downstairs TV, you can suck one.
Yeah, exactly.
Period.
For sure.
Period.
Yeah.
The first episode of WandaVision was filmed in black and white in front of a live studio audience. WandaVision drops in December 2020. It was moved up from April 21. And it'll give Disney Plus something to roll into straight after when The Mandalorian ends. I mean, the first episode was like a love letter to I Love Lucy.
Oh, yeah. At first, I wasn't that excited, but I don't know, seeing the stills and seeing the preview of it, I think it actually is going to be what we need. Whether we want it or not, I think it's what we need, where it's like, it's going to be silly, it's going to be characters we know, but not the way that we know them. And I think that's going to be the cool thing about it. I think it's going to be fun in the good way that Disney can make things fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited it'll come right off of Mando. Although it just gives me...
There might be some overlap even.
Yeah, right. But I'm glad we have something else to look forward to in times where we don't have a lot of stuff to look forward to. Except for another thing that's happening in December.
Tenet will finally be streaming on December 15th. I believe it's going to Netflix.
I believe so, yeah.
Which is weird because are they going to do like a rental thing?
No, I think Netflix probably paid a lot of money for it because they can do that kind of thing.
It's also up. I saw it's up for pre-order on Amazon for 4K DVD or whatever if you still buy those sort of things. But yeah, I think December 15th I'm definitely watching this. If I have to, wait until 10 o'clock when the little people are asleep and all that, but I'm definitely day one. I'm going to be watching this.
Oh, sure.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's a Tuesday too, so I'm off, and I'll probably watch it right after we do the pod.
In that case, I might wait till Wednesday. Okay, Jurassic World Dominion wraps after its 18th month of production. Will release in June of 2022. 18 months.
These movies are fine.
COVID.
Yeah, COVID. These are just the movies where like I'm glad they're out there and I see them in the theaters just because they're there.
I really liked the first Jurassic World.
I really liked the first one. The second one
was a no for me, dog.
Right, yeah, it was a no for me as well. It's just another thing. I'm shocked if something gets moved forward that's in big production, that's when I'll be shocked.
One of the movies that we've talked about did. I want to say it was The Matrix. Got moved up.
Yeah, maybe it did.
I think that got bumped forward.
That's, good for them for being able to figure this all out.
Well, I mean, the big news, and maybe we should have talked about it at some point, is that, this isn't a pop culture. This is just a, world culture thing, is that one of the vaccines was proved to be 90% effective. And the good Dr. Fauci believes that there will be, widespread vaccines by April of what the hell year is it? 2021.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance that these movies that are getting bumped around and everything that by next summer we might actually be able to have a real summer again. So we'll see.
Not to get too into it, but on the financial end of things, as someone who invests in stock market, movie theater companies had a nice showing after that news was announced.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah.
AMC, you can get it on the cheap now for about. Well, I mean, you could get it real cheap. It was like $2. Now it's $4.50, but
right. But that's still like for them to go up at all. It makes them at least optimistic.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Variety named Harry Styles Hitmaker of the Year.
Yeah, I just put that in there just because it's my guy, and I'm happy for him.
What hit has he made?
Watermelon Sugar, man. It's a great song.
Watermelon
it was number
Sugar
one.
Is,
Watermelon Sugar. Watermelon Sugar. Yeah, check it out.
I haven't heard that. I do like.
You should.
I do like eating watermelons in the summer.
He does too. The video, he eats watermelon.
Does he eat the whole rind? Because I do.
Well, we don't know. I know it's disturbing. We should pickle the rind.
That's weird. I don't like that. Media consumption. What are you into? It says here that you're reading a book by James Elliott and Thom Elliott.
Yeah, Thom Elliott. It's a pizza
like
book.
Thom York?
It's a pizza book. It's awesome. It's one of the few ones where it's a travel log because they've gone all around and they from New York, LA, Chicago, and then obviously Italy for pizza. And then that's the first half of the book, and then you learn a lot of things about the culture of pizza and how it's different in a lot of different places. And then as someone who loves pizza, and I'm wearing my employer's shirt right now, which is a pizza place, and I make my own pizza. I have my own pizza oven.
Did I see that you were making a pizza with a potato on it?
Yeah, it's delicious. Yeah, you should try pizza with potato on it. It's great. If you like potatoes, it's...
I don't like potatoes.
You don't like potatoes? Wow.
No.
But anyhow, and then the second half is recipes, and so it's just a really, if you love pizza, it's a great pizza book. And then I'm also reading My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I've dug deep. I told you how I read The Lie and Life of Adults, so I'm doing that. And then The Great British Bake Off, still on the new season. We found out that the old seasons are out there, the ones that weren't originally on Netflix. So we're watching that, and apparently there's a French British Bake Off.
You can't do that.
Well, a French Bake Off based off of the British Bake Off. So it's French people, but it's not even like dubbed or anything. I think I might have to just watch it. And just figure it out. Maybe that's how I learned French. But
two things. Number one, we are American because this is America.
Yeah.
So Alex Trebek died a week after Sean Connery died.
Right. Your mother's a whore.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing: is I felt bad because I do impressions.
Right.
Unknown people know me as somebody who does impressions, and I didn't take the opportunity to do Sean Connery.
Man, the penis might you.
So here's what I'm going to do: is I'm going to do my media recommendations, and I'm going to do them in the voice of Sean Connery.
Beautiful.
You good with that?
I'm fine with it.
Sure, Greg. I've been watching Utopia. So I have. I've been playing Far Cry 3. Classic Edition. Just the way your mother likes it. It's been rough. Real rough. So I've been playing Far Cry 3 Classic Edition. And I did, in the interim last week, I beat Castlevania Requiem Collection. It was my 70th Platinum Trophy. And I'll be honest, mostly what I've been watching is just election coverage because I'm a
same.
Psycho. So, sure.
Welcome to The Rock.
I'm trying to think what he says in The Untouchable is one of the things. Kevin Costner. Let's do some good. They bring a knife, we bring a gun. They put one in the hospital, we put one of theirs in the morgue. Something
like that, yeah.
It doesn't. It probably doesn't sound as good as I think it does.
That's good.
Okay. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. GT Filson, and at Y2B and at BXG Podcast. It's late, so
it's super late. I'm even feeling it. It's
quarter off. It's quarter after 12 here. So the wheels are coming off a little bit. Instagram at GTFills, at Y2B, at BXG Podcast, Facebook.com/BXG Podcast, YouTube.com/BXG Podcast, where you can listen to the static image versions of the podcast, in which will also be featuring in the near future Greg's pizza reviews and me playing Fall Guys.
Awesome. I'm excited about that.
That should be fun. Subscribe, leave kind reviews, share, recommend to your friends, tell your parents.
Tell your mothers.
About the unmistakable essence of the BXG podcast. We appreciate JCL Faltot coming on this evening with us. Narrative Wars podcast, the Writer's Lunch podcast, and his primary novel, The Road to Mars, available at Amazon. On Amazon? At Amazon. Whatever.
Same
thing.
Online, inline.
Online. Local bookstores in the western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio region. I don't think that's something that you guys carry, do you? Do you have his book?
No, we could probably special order it for her. Yeah, we could probably special order it. Yeah, not a problem.
I'm not interested. I've waited so long for the paperback. Has no one heard of Paul Sheldon? Misery's Child, Misery in France.
Very
what
good.
Kind of cockadoodie bookstore is this?
What's funny is I deal with that almost once a week, something like that. A lot of times it's on the phone, though. But anyhow, I digress.
Nobody heard of Paul Sheldon? I can order it for you. All right. Take care, guys.
Thanks for listening. have this fake cat behind me. His name's Chowder. So
Meow TV.
He says hello.
Meow
yeah, because I'm allergic to cats, so we can't really have a cat.